So tell me, what do you think of when you hear the word change? I know for me it's a love, it's a passion, it's thinking about the possibilities that I know are possible both for myself, for my friends, my family, and for my clients. But it's also about that ooey gooey messy gray in the middle that sometimes it feels like is going on forever. It's also for me about the aha moments that happen along the journey, but it's also about the oh shit moments. But mostly it's about the fact that change is a journey. Welcome to Let's Talk Change. This is a series that over time is going to tackle all kinds of change, personal, professional, things that happen in the family. My name is Lisa Blanchet, and I am both a leadership coach and a strategic workplace consultant. And I have had the absolute pleasure and also the frustration to work with individuals, teams, project teams, leadership groups to help them through various workplace change. Today I wanted to share with you a couple of my core change principles. So the first is really that the change is a process. And because it's a process, it's going to take time. And, as much as leaders, we would love for it if we shared an idea, whether that's verbally or through an email, that whoever we shared that with would, just start doing that new thing, or they would know it's in our head and they would just be able to start actioning that. But the reality is that change takes time, because when you are going through any kind of change, professionally, personally, doesn't matter, you are going to start to do something, which also means you're going to stop doing something or stop seeing something, stop being something. And when you letting go of that, or that stopping motion, is a lot like what you experience when you go through grief. And, when we experience that loss, or when we give up something, or we're letting go of something, we're human beings, which means, guess what? There's a whole lot of emotions that are attached to that. And so not only is it that change is a process, but when you think about that process, and as human beings, we have an emotional reaction, it also means that you and we're going to have a different reaction to that change. And we're also going to have the reaction at a different pace. And maybe I'm more open to a particular change, and there's something else that the next change is something you're more open to. And when we think about that in an organizational context, oftentimes the leaders in an organization are aware of the change ahead of some of the other folks in the organization. And they may have been based on, either their role from a leadership lens or from a project team lens. They've been, in the weeds of that change. They have thought about it. They've understood it. But what they've also done is they've had time to process it themselves. They have had time to say, well, what if this? Well, this isn't going to work. Or they've had time to resist and push back and ignore. And they've had time, right? And time is the key part of that process. And so what can often happen in an organization is that, that the leadership team, the project team, whoever it is, have been noodling on this idea. They have been working it through. They've been figuring out the plans. They've been figuring out the actions. And then they're like, okay, we're ready to implement. We're ready to have that change happen. Except that those folks that you're now sharing that with, they're back at the beginning of their change journey. They're back where you were as a leader or a project team member 6, 8, maybe 12 months ago. And so when we think about the process, there's the emotional side to that process in terms of, how somebody reacts to the change, what they're feeling, what they might be losing. They might be letting go of something. And that's really important to understand, but it's also knowing that the process is also a more logical component too, in terms of if we think about it from, an adult learning principle, or the way that we process life, is that, when somebody wants to make a change, or when you yourself want to make the change, why am I doing this? And understanding what the why is, and understanding not just why this is great for my organization, because that's important, that's where I work, but it's understanding, what does this mean for me? And even more importantly, what do you want me to do differently, or what do I need to do differently as this change happens? Because, as employees in an organization, We don't invest, the hours and hours that we do into work to fail. And when an organization decides to make some type of change, we have the organization has a responsibility to help those individuals through that change. Which brings me really to, a second one of my change principles, and that's that change is personal. And while, that journey of emotions and that reaction, it's also personal in that I'm going to process my own change for me, right? So if we think about a broad scale organizational change where we're implementing a new system, so there's absolutely those changes in terms of it's a new system we're introducing. We're probably going to say goodbye to an old system. There's probably a series of processes. Maybe, my role or my job description is changing. So we've got some of the people, the process, and the technology that's changing. But on an individual level, and the part that's really personal here, is that when you introduce something like a new system or you overhaul your processes and even a reorg, any one of those changes means that me, as an individual, I have to say, act, or do something in a different way than I do today. And that change, really means that you're asking me to change my habits, my behaviors, and maybe even some of the things that I've believed for a really long time. And so there is nothing more personal than my habits, my behaviors, and my beliefs. And so when we're thinking about introducing change, as an employee or a leader, we've all experienced change. If we hadn't experienced change before COVID, we've certainly had our fair share over the last 4 years. I'd really love to hear about your change experience, so comment below or send me a DM, and let's keep talking about change. Until next time.